Thank you for joining us. You are practicing law in Paris. You are working for the American law firm Hughes Hubbard Reed. You are specialized in white collar and regulatory defense for more than 1 decade. Ralph, you have been working with politicians with the most famous cases, Affaire Balkany and others. So Ralph, I have a couple of questions for you. Thank you again, Ralph, for joining us. You are also a member of France-Amériques, so you know the place. Today we are not in the rooms of France-Amériques, but it's almost the case. My first question, Ralph, is the following: according to you, is there a legal definition of fake news in France? Thank you, Ralph.
Thank you, Aubin, for the introduction. And first, I want to say that it's a very hard situation in which I am, because I'm speaking after 5 of the panelists. So basically, everybody has already said everything, and I'm coming at the next moment, and I'm trying to make a kind of summary. Or actually, I will try to make a summary and on a legal perspective. That's exactly the first question. Is there any legal definition of fake news? And it's not according to me, it's according to the law, and specifically in France. So let me be straightforward. There is no legal definition, and there is no general definition of fake news in France, which does not mean that there is no legal provision to fight fake news. It's not a general definition that allows to forbid or to prohibit all kinds of fake news. So my first question is, why don't you have any general definition, any legal definition of fake news? I guess we can find plenty of reasons, plenty of explanation. For my part, I will just talk about 2 of them, according to me. I think there's the first explanation. There is our specific, our own relation, our own bonds between us and what we call the facts. This first connection is, on the first hand, very easy. When we think about it, we all have this intuition of what is a fact. It's simply what happened, but actually it's more complicated. It's not only my mother went to the bakery. It's more complicated than this. And why I'm saying this, it's because a fact is also a social construction, which appreciation depends on our own bias and our own prejudices. And these bias also may result of the country or in the period of time we are living. So we have to pay attention of what is really a fact. And we can take a simple example in history. For example, if we talk about the French Revolution or the Bastille Day, for the last 250 days, people are still arguing on this subject. It's not something that is settled, and yet it happened 200 years ago. So here, when we're talking about the fact, we're talking only about the fact that has just happened, and we don't have we have to step back a little bit and to analyze this fact. And that's complication, that's complex fact can be explained because all facts are subject to a multitude of causality, which allows anyone to give its opinion on a fact. So if I want to say it simple, a fact can evolve, and which was true yesterday can be wrong the next day. And I know I may shock some people when I'm saying this, but that's, if I may say, a fact as well. And in another word also, a fact is a point in the truth. It is not something that cannot evolve. So it is particularly true for a subject like the COVID, because that's the subject today. for a simple reason. It's that the COVID is a new virus. It's a new virus, and the scientific knowledge today is lacking to freeze the facts on the matter. I don't know if someone talked earlier about the hydroxychloroquine, this treatment that is very famous in France and very famous in the US because the American president said he was taking it. We have maybe a dozen of studies about it. So let's say half of it say it's working, the other half say it's not working. I don't know what specifically these studies are saying, but what I'm saying is that we have to step back and see which one is working, and maybe we will have the answer with the side effect and everything in about a year or something like this. So I think we have to be humble in our approach about what is a fake news. But does that mean that there is no fake news during the COVID pandemic? Absolutely not. I'm not saying this. But I think we have to identify a fake news. And I think maybe Gabriel said this before, and we should question more the intent and the methodology of the issuer of the information. Let's give an example also. I'm trying to do this for all of what I'm saying. I will try to connect what I'm saying with a COVID example. We all heard this fake news that China had allegedly the vaccine, but they will not share it with all the other countries. So here, what is the underlying idea? It's because we want to say that China is not sharing. China want to rule the world and is using this virus to rule the world. That's the underlying idea, and this is, for me, a fake news. The second explanation, and I tried to be also very quick on it, is that if there is a general legal definition, who will give it? The state will give it. And the state cannot give the general definition of what is a fake news without endangering freedom of speech and expression. I think that's everybody agrees on it. So we all know also that freedom of speech is constitutionally protected in all the democratic society and is essential to democracy. So prohibiting fake news in a general way will be, and I'm really thinking it, will be the end of a democracy, as only one entity would say what is the truth. And this entity will be the state. So we have to pay attention of our critique on fake news without undermining the importance of it. So the problem, if the state is the only one, we enter in a totalitarian state, one who will not agree with what is the official truth can then be sued, charged, prosecuted, and imprisoned. But on the other hand, and that's where fake news is dangerous, is that that freedom of speech can also be used against democracy. That's, you will say, the game. But still here, forbidding the fake news can be counterproductive for one simple reason. The idea is quite simple, and I don't remember who said this before, but I tell something wrong, okay? The states, they like the newspaper, whatsoever, what people think is the people leading, will say that it's fake news. So my reaction, I will say, look, they're touching my freedom of speech, okay? That's because I am right. I am right, and they don't want you to know. So you get into a circle where you actually give credit to someone who will use these fake news. So I think these are the two main reasons why there is no legal definition of what is a fake news. So my next question is actually, what is a fake news? And the first, let me say that it's something that had always existed. It had always existed. You can call it rumor, conspiracy, you can call it propaganda, public relations, whatsoever. It has always existed. But today there is a huge difference, because at the time, these fake news were controlled by the state or the elite or whatsoever. So you had an institution which you could regulate easily. But today, we have a complete change in our world, which is the internet, which is the social medias. And these social medias change everything. So we are basically facing massive information, and everybody can give its opinion. Everybody can reach 1 million of people. And that's where the danger is. So if let me try to give a legal definition. I think a fake news is an information intentionally wrong. So intentionally, I think, Gabriel, you said it, in order to be broadcast in a large part of a population to help a political or ideological agenda.
Thank you, Ralph. I would like to add, to understand your methodology, that you have a double background as a lawyer and also in history. So thank you. I have a second question for you. Please be brief, because we are running out of the clock. So, but you already started to answer this question. Are there any limitation of the propagation of fake news?
Obviously, yes. Obviously, yes. I mean, like all fundamental rights, freedom of speech can be limited if it faces a public necessity. And the provision to limit its exercise has to be proportionate to the goal pursued. It's a classic way to think public liberty and constitutional law. And let me just talk a bit about France. I will try to go very fast, because in France, we have many provisions to punish the spreading of false information, whether it can be in financial matters like price manipulation, or insider stealing, malicious accusation, also in commercial and so on. I'm not going to list all of them. I'm just going to give two categories of limitation. The first one exists since the 19th century in France. As I say, the fake news are not new. And in France, in 1881, a law framed freedom of press and expression that can apply to fake news. So let me talk only about two of these provisions. You can find more in them, but you have two of them which are, I think, very important for us. The first one is in French in Article 27. It provides that the publication, the dissemination, the reproduction of news that is false, fabricated, falsified, made in bad faith, which has disturbed or is likely to disturb public peace, shall be punishable by a fine of 45,000 euros. So here you can find what the two prongs of my definition. First, it's bad faith. Bad faith is what is the intent of the person who will release the information. The second one refers to the public peace, which is the political agenda. And the public peace gives to the judge a large appreciation of what he can sanction or not. Let me just read, because I found it and I think it summarized perfectly the situation. It's a case law in the 80s. The judge ruled, and that's what he said. He said, freedom of press, which is one of the most essential foundations of democracy, cannot accommodate the most unfair methods of misleading the reader, abusing his or her credulity, and misinforming him or her. So let's try to give an example in the COVID. We all heard of people saying that there is food shortage in some markets. Let's imagine that one guy who has millions of followers will post it. He posts it, and people will go mad and go to the market. They won't find what they want because everybody went there before, so they won't find food, and there go riots. Here go riots. In theory, he could be sued according to this article. Another article, and I don't have a lot of time, Aubin, but I'll try to go fast. The other article is Article 24 that punishes those who have provoked. Sorry, one second. Those who have provoked by any means, which includes writing, hatred or violence against a person or group of persons on the account of their origin, nation, race, or religion. This is a very important limitation. And if I want to give an example, I can give two of them. The first one, let's say it's very easy. I'm going to say the Jews created the virus. It's simple. It's simple because we all know all the background behind it. It's provocation. It's provocation because we all know that Jews were accused of conspiracy. They were all scapegoats and so on. So it's very easy to denounce this kind of fake news. But here there's another example, which is more complicated. We are more in the gray area. If I say the virus comes from China, it's a fact. If I say Chinese brought the virus, kill them all, well, that's quite easy as well. It's a provocation. But for example, if I say the Chinese brought the virus, or if I say the Chinese virus, like the American president said, here we are in the gray area. We don't really know if it's provocation or just freedom of speech. So here it will be to the judge to rule on this kind of matter. And last thing, and then Aubin, I swear I stop, because all these provisions have a major weakness. It does not fit in a world where we have a massive stock of information, because in these cases, a court will rule maybe in 6 months, a year, even more, and the damage will already been done. I think, Kaylin, you talked about it. That's why in France, we implemented a new law in December 2018. And this law concerns online platform. The idea is to give, like Thomas said in Brazil, the idea is to give the user a clear, faithful, and transparent information, not necessarily on the fact itself, but on the entity that released the information, or at least on the entity who had financed it. But the thing is that the sanction, if you don't give this information, is very harsh, because the sanction is, for example, that the platform can be forbidden to exercise during 5 years. So it's very harsh sanction, but it's very limited. The scope is very limited because this provision is only during electoral time, which is, according to the law, 3 months before the ballots. So it's very limited. All this information given to the users are made before the information is released. But there is also a new provision in the same law for the case after the information is released. And the law created an emergency procedure to have a judgment enforceable in 48 hours in case. So I think this is the first step to regulate the fake news. The underlying idea here is to give to the platform the obligation to check the information. This is maybe the most efficient way to fight fake news. But there is also a danger because if you do so, you are basically giving the company the right to act as a judge, to deem which information is fake or not.
Thank you.
We went fast, huh?
It means you have finished. Thank you, Ralph. It's very interesting.